Other indicators of shorter, warmer winters include fewer days with snow cover, earlier spring melts in our rivers, lakes, and streams, and less snow and more rain, which is not my favorite, that's for sure. Nothing puts a damper on a winter day, and skiing is more than rain. We also see our lakes icing out 1 to 2 weeks earlier. This is one in New England. This is in New Hampshire, actually, Lake Winnipesaukee. And you can see here it's beautifully frozen over. But nowadays, it's like icing out. The ice is disappearing about a week or two earlier than it did in the late 1800s. Very consistent with our temperature trends. When I think of ice fishing, one thing I like to remember is my mom. This is her in 1967. This is not at Lake Winnipesaukee, however. Most people, when I tell them, are surprised to find out that this was in northern New Jersey. This was when she was about 15 years old, and she's holding a rather large pickerel in her hand there. And it was one of the first, probably the last time she went ice fishing. And a lot of people don't exactly plan their ice fishing vacations to New Jersey. And part of that today is because, you know what, the ice just isn't as reliable. Ice fishing derbies get postponed, or worse, they get canceled. And other people just end up going a little bit further north to find that local ice. What I like to point out about this is in this part of the state in New Jersey, when she was growing up there, the average winter temperature was below zero. Today, it's now above zero, which means that anything that was frozen water is now going to be liquid water. So they get less snow, less lake ice, and much more rain. This happened over the course of a generation. And to me, this is what informs and also motivates a lot of my research. I look at my children and think of the changes they're going to see over their lifetime. Will southeastern New Hampshire, where I live today, cross that same critical threshold that my mom's part of her childhood also changed in New Jersey? I think it actually might, based on the research I've conducted. And this has an impact not just on our cultural traditions, but also on the economy. In the United States, Americans spend $241 million on ice fishing equipment. This may seem like a lot of money, but in actuality, this is pretty much a pipsqueak when you compare it to something like the ski industry. In 2012, co-author Matt Magnuson and I embarked on writing a report with Protect Our Winters and the Natural Resources Defense Council to try and quantify the climate impacts on our winter tourism economy. We recently updated this report in 2018, and this included some co-authors, one Mark Hagenstad, who's in Colorado, and also Rebecca Hill, who's at CSU. And essentially what we were looking at was the size of the economy. When we look at the economy in terms of its in a whole, it's about $11.3 billion in 2015 and 2016, and supported about 191,000 jobs. This included direct spending at resorts, indirect spending in the communities around the resorts, and then also the induced spending the communities that are around the resort are in turn benefiting from. So you can think of this as how often money is exchanging hands as a result of having a ski area or people who are tourists doing winter recreation in that area. Keeping in mind that 2015-16 was a pretty much a down year for the Northeastern United States, when you look across the US, it's very clear that the leader is Colorado, no surprise there. They have very nice mountains and really reliable snow, and they're known for attracting a lot of skiers. California would be second place there, bringing about 21,000 jobs based on our analysis. In the Northeastern United States and New Hampshire, in 2015-16, it was probably closer to 5,700 jobs. If you imagine a much better year when we have more snow, you could probably inflate that number by a good couple thousand, so maybe up to 8,000 to 9,000 jobs supported by the ski industry. When we look at the value added or the economic contribution, so this is again that money that's changing hands, in a place like New Hampshire, we see about over $340 million coming into our state just from the ski industry alone. In a place like Colorado, it's closer to 2.5 to 2.6 billion, and possibly even more when you start counting in all of the soft goods sales, so sale of skis and sale of winter equipment that's used for skiing. That was not included in this analysis. This is simply people going to resorts and visiting and skiing as part of their trip. We also took a look at how this changes relative to a long-term average. So this was over the period 2001 to 2016. We looked for the 5 snowiest years, so our top 5 years, and compared them to our bottom 5 years. And when you compare those, the top 5 years bring in an extra $692 million in economic activity and support 11,800 more jobs, which is great news. When you look at the lower years, however, the bottom 5, we see a decrease of about $1 billion in economic activity and 17,400 fewer jobs. This is indicative of an unequal response, right? When you look at the bottom 5, that's a much larger response. So why is that? Well, it turns out, when you're thinking about a ski resort, in a good year, they can reach capacity. They can only move so many people up a lift or fill the parking lot so far until they reach a maximum. But during a bottom 5 year, there's really a year when just about everything can shut down. And that happens to some resorts when they don't get snow. Some years, some of the smaller resorts just simply can't even open. So what about the future of skiing? Where is this all going? Are we going to have skiing in the future? I say yes, we will, but it's not going to be the same as what we've experienced in the past. Both rain on snow events and these winter heat waves that we've been experiencing are expected to happen more frequently in a warming climate. During the year 2017, this is a picture of one of my field sites where I was trying to sample snow, and what you can't tell by that photo is that I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. It was hot out. It was about 60 degrees that night, and we were able to sleep with the windows open in the middle of February. That's highly unusual in New Hampshire. You can see a temperature map showing just how warm those temperatures were. In Boston, people weren't thinking about skiing. Instead, they were most likely riding bikes or doing other outdoor activities that they typically don't get to participate in February. Meanwhile, a lot of the resorts were struggling to keep snow on their slopes. And that led to a really, really tough year in terms of having really warm temperatures. We can also take a look at the future of climatically reliable Winter Olympic venues. These are venues that could, by the definition of the author here, this is Daniel Scott out of University of Waterloo, he was looking at, can a resort stay open because the temperatures remain below freezing, and they can also maintain a snowpack of at least 30 centimeters or so. And that could be an artificial snowpack or a natural snowpack. Just can they keep the snow on the ground? So historically, these are where most of the Olympic venues were that they analyzed in their study. And by 2050, only half of them remain climatically stable, meaning that they can support that 30 centimeter snowpack and have temperatures that are below freezing. You'll note some of your favorites might have disappeared there. By the end of the century, only 8 remain climatically stable. And this is under what they call a high emission scenario. So that means we continue putting greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And this is bad news. This means that a lot of places that we relied on for our winter recreation are likely going to have a hard time staying open for those activities in the future. We can also look at other metrics such as snowline elevation. This is the elevation above which you see snow and below which is probably precipitation falling as rain. This is also where snowpack gets maintained at higher elevations and melts below there. This was a study that was done back in late 2000s in 2008. Here we're looking at Aspen, and the scientists who conducted this study, this was Lazar and Williams in 2008. The snow line right here in Aspen is actually below the valley floor, so 6,725 feet. The valley floor is actually a bit higher than that. And you can see the lifts here in red. The trails are all in the grayish colors. And you can see that there's no dark line here. But as we move forward in time, regardless of our action, the snow line starts to creep up the mountain. By 2100, if we act now, the snow line will be right around here. So cutting through the middle of the Silver Queen gondola. Okay? If we don't act, meaning we continue to emit CO2, we continue to emit greenhouse gases, and we don't embrace efficient technologies, that snow line creeps all the way up to here, around 10,000 feet. For those of you who are from Colorado, this might be a little bit shocking to think that the snow line is going to be at 10,000 feet and not normally where it was before, which is well below that. It also means that the valley average winter temperature is going to be about 36 degrees Fahrenheit. That's above freezing, unfortunately. The study also looked at Park City, Utah. And today, the snow line, again, just like Aspen, it's below the valley floor. You can see all the lifts here again. This one's the town lift. I got stuck on that one time. I didn't realize where the trail I was taking me, and ended up on that one. When we look at 2030, regardless of our action, the snow line is already starting to creep up the mountain. So this is happening faster at Park City than it is at Aspen. By 2100, if we act now, the snow line is just here. So it's at the tippy top of the mountain. And it's basically saying that anywhere that's below that elevation, they're going to need to be making snow really in a big way in order to keep up with this. And only at the top of the mountain are they going to have that natural snow that's going to be able to support them. By 2100, if we don't act, the snow line moves above the summit. And that's really bad news because that means that the snowmaking capabilities are going to need to be very robust in order to keep up. And in the eastern United States, water resources are not as big of an issue as they are out west. Out west, water rights are a huge deal, and they're going to be in conflict with this type of trend that we're seeing in terms of snowmaking needs. So with that, I'd like to express gratitude to our support. This is just some of the grants that support my work, and also to Protect Our Winters for all of their hard work in seeing action for this very important issue. So thank you for listening, and yeah, enjoy the rest.